I never thought a birthday could hurt the same way every year. You'd think after the first few disappointments the sting would fade, but pain has a strange memory. It knows how to find its way back sharper, cleaner, quieter each time. My name is Olivia, and I'm 39 years old. For the fifth year in a row, my birthday started with the same text message: Happy birthday, honey. Sorry we're a little busy. We'll call you soon. Love you. The same words copied and pasted from my mother's phone like a formality she couldn't be bothered to rewrite. I could recite it from memory, every syllable an echo of all the years I kept pretending it didn't hurt. A few minutes later, as I stood in my kitchen pouring coffee, my phone lit up again, but this time not from her. It was Instagram. And there it was, the annual punch to the gut dressed up as a filtered photo, my sister Megan sitting on a sun-drenched balcony, smiling with that perfect golden glow only she ever seemed to have. Behind her stretched the turquoise horizon of the Charleston coastline. The caption beneath the photo read, "Celebrating my baby girl's birthday early. Nothing but the best for you." In her lap, resting casually as if it were nothing, was a brand new Gucci purse, one of the limited edition ones I'd seen online, the kind that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. I didn't have to check the date to know the truth. Megan's birthday was in August. Mine was in June. They weren't busy. They were celebrating her. Again. I just stood there, coffee cooling in my hands, staring at that photo until my chest felt tight. It wasn't even about the purse. It wasn't even about the trip. It was about the pattern, the same unspoken message replaying year after year: you don't matter as much as she does. I had always been the responsible one, the one who didn't need help, the one who didn't make trouble. I went to college on scholarships. I worked part-time jobs through school. I bought my own first car with cash I'd saved from tutoring kids who were barely younger than me. And Megan, she was the fragile one, the one everyone worried about, the one who needed saving, the one who just couldn't catch a break. If Megan forgot a deadline, Mom called her boss to explain. If Megan got into credit card debt, Dad helped her pay it off. And if Megan wanted something expensive, it always somehow became a gift she deserved. Meanwhile, I learned how to swallow disappointment with a polite smile and a calm voice. I told myself it wasn't favoritism, just family dynamics. I told myself it didn't matter. Until this year. Because this year, for the first time, someone actually noticed. When my fiancé Nathan walked into the kitchen that morning, he saw the look on my face, then glanced at my phone. I could see the reflection of the Instagram post in his eyes. He didn't say, "That's awful," or "I'm sorry." Instead, he asked softly, "Are you tired of being the strong one?" That question cracked something inside me. I didn't answer him right away. I just stood there, trembling slightly, my throat tight with the kind of sadness that doesn't make sound. All the years I had defended them, made excuses for them, carried the emotional load, it all came flooding back. Maybe they forgot she's going through a lot. Every time I told myself I was overreacting. I wasn't overreacting. I was overcompensating for people who didn't care enough to even pretend. I told Nathan about my 32nd birthday, the one I tried to make special by booking reservations at that impossible-to-get Italian restaurant downtown. I'd been so proud of myself for finally doing something for me. An hour before we were supposed to meet, my mom called not to wish me happy birthday but to cancel. Megan had a bad day at work, she'd said. She needs me tonight. We'll celebrate you another time. That another time never came. Then I told him about when I had my wisdom teeth removed. My mom had promised she'd pick me up after the procedure, but she didn't show. I sat in the recovery room, numb and dizzy, waiting as nurses politely asked if someone was coming. Finally, I called an Uber, mouthful of gauze, still half-sedated, tears burning down my cheeks. Her excuse later, "Oh, honey, I lost track of time." But the worst memory, the one that still made my stomach twist, was the year I had my miscarriage. The doctor told me not to go home alone. I called my mom, sobbing, barely able to speak. She said she'd be right there. I waited and waited. 2 hours later, I took another Uber ride, curled up in the back seat, pressing my hand to my stomach like I could hold the loss together by sheer will. The next day she texted, "So sorry about yesterday. I just figured you'd want to be alone." When I finished talking, Nathan just sat there in silence, holding my hand. His quiet was the first kind of safety I'd ever known, the kind that didn't demand forgiveness or understanding. And for the first time in my life, I realized how lonely I'd been all these years. This birthday wasn't just another slight, it was a breaking point, a line drawn after a lifetime of invisible endurance. The Gucci purse, the sunny beach caption, the recycled text. They weren't forgetful, they were deliberate. They had chosen to erase me. I picked up my phone and opened the message thread from my mother. Her final "love you, just busy" still glowed at the top. For years, my reply had always been polite, predictable. "Thanks, Mom. Hope you're having fun." But not this time. My fingers shook as I typed the words I'd swallowed for decades. "Don't bother calling. I'm done." I stared at it for a moment, my pulse loud in my ears. Then I hit send. The effect was immediate. The phone buzzed nonstop, first a text, then another, then a call. "Are you serious right now?" she wrote. Not "what's wrong," not "I'm sorry." Just indignation, the outrage of someone who couldn't believe I'd stopped playing my assigned role. Then the calls came, 10 missed calls in the first hour. Then an email from my father written like a press release filled with passive aggression and self-pity. He accused me of being dramatic, ungrateful, and selfish, said I was ruining their vacation and tearing the family apart. And then, as if on cue, Megan called crying. Her voicemail was full of sobs and guilt trips. "Liv, I don't know what's going on, but you're putting me in the middle of this. It's not fair to me." That was the moment I realized I wasn't the middle, I was the foundation. I was the quiet scaffolding that had been holding up their fragile world for years. And I had just stepped away. For the first time, I didn't reply. I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I put my phone on silent and set it down. And in the silence that followed, something incredible happened. The world didn't end. The guilt didn't kill me. The noise just stopped. The quiet that used to feel unbearable suddenly felt like freedom. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. I spent the first 2 days after sending that message in a strange quiet, a silence that felt heavier than sound. I kept checking my phone, half expecting another explosion of messages, some desperate apology or emotional plea. But none came. Just silence. For the first time, I realized that maybe they weren't calling because they didn't know how to function without me being the one to fix things. The air in my apartment felt different, lighter somehow, the kind of stillness that lets you hear yourself think. I walked around barefoot, opened the windows, and just let the quiet in. It was almost startling how peaceful it was until guilt tried to crawl back in like an unwelcome guest. That little voice in my head whispered, "What if they really didn't mean to hurt you? What if you're overreacting?" But then another thought answered back. What if they did, and you just refused to see it for too long? That second voice, the one I'd silenced for years, was louder now. I poured myself a glass of wine that night and sat on the couch scrolling through old text threads. Years of small betrayals disguised as family affection were right there in black and white. "We'll make it up to you. Maybe next time. Don't take it so personally." It was almost poetic, a pattern so predictable it could have been a calendar event. It's strange how when you finally wake up from emotional neglect, everything before that moment looks unreal, like you've been walking through someone else's dream. Nathan came home late that night carrying takeout and my favorite chocolate cake. He didn't say happy birthday, not in a loud, performative way. He just set it down, looked at me, and said quietly, "You deserve to be celebrated." That broke me, not in the painful way, in the healing way, like a cracked shell letting light in for the first time. We ate together in the soft glow of the kitchen light. He didn't ask about my family. He didn't have to. He just listened as I talked, really talked about all the years I'd spent chasing validation from people who didn't even remember my favorite color. Somewhere between the second slice of cake and the last sip of wine, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them rewrite my story again. I was done being the invisible daughter. The next morning, I blocked my family's numbers, every one of them. It felt dramatic, almost childish, until I realized that blocking wasn't punishment. It was closure. For the first time in my life, I didn't owe them access to my peace. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail. I recognized my father's handwriting immediately, neat, controlled, the kind of script that always looked like he was writing from a distance. I didn't open it right away. I left it on the counter for hours, just staring at it while I cleaned, cooked, and worked. It sat there like a symbol, the weight of a lifetime of expectations in one white envelope. That evening, I finally tore it open. It wasn't an apology, it never was. He started with how hurt they were, how they didn't deserve to be treated like this, how family is everything, and how I was overreacting to small misunderstandings. Small misunderstandings. That phrase burned. Was it a small misunderstanding when they forgot to visit me in the hospital? When they took my sister on vacations and left me behind with excuses about being too busy? When they made me feel like a guest in my own childhood, I folded the letter back up calmly and put it in a drawer. I didn't rip it. I didn't burn it. I just stored it away like evidence in a case that no longer needed trial. That night, I sat at my computer and opened an empty document. I started writing. Not to them, but to myself. I wrote about the birthdays spent waiting by the phone, about the empty chairs at my graduation, about how every time they called me the responsible one, it was just code for the one we can forget. By the time I was done, I had 5 pages of memories I didn't even know were still living in me. But they were out now, on paper, no longer haunting me from the inside. And that's when something unexpected happened. I started to forgive them, not because they deserved it, but because I did. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about absolving others. It's about freeing yourself from the constant replay of pain that no longer serves you. A few weeks passed before the next shock came. One morning, while scrolling through social media, I saw a post from Megan, a picture of her and my parents sitting at a restaurant smiling under the caption, "So grateful for family who always shows up." The audacity almost made me laugh. I stared at it for a long moment, then closed the app. I didn't comment, didn't react. That image wasn't about love. It was about control. They wanted me to see it, to feel excluded, to crawl back into the role they'd written for me. But the script had changed. Instead of anger, I felt pity, not for myself, but for them. Because no matter how many smiles they staged, they couldn't hide what was missing: authenticity. That was the day I started making new traditions. Nathan and I took a road trip to the mountains the following weekend. No big plans, no family drama, just us and the sound of the wind through the trees. I brought my journal and wrote every morning at sunrise. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to earn my place in the world. I just existed fully, freely enough. On the drive back, Nathan reached for my hand and said, "You know, your piece looks good on you." It made me laugh. I didn't know peace could be an accessory, I teased. He smiled. "No, it's a transformation." That night, as I unpacked, I glanced again at the letter in the drawer. I took it out one last time, walked to the balcony, and watched as the sunset painted the sky in gold and rose. Then, without ceremony, I fed the letter to the flame of a candle. It burned slow, curling at the edges until it turned to ash. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just felt light. Because that's what healing really is. Not fireworks or closure speeches, but the quiet knowing that you no longer need the apology that will never come. I went to bed early that night, windows open, the air cool against my skin. And for the first time in my life, I slept without waiting for anyone to remember me. A few months passed, and the silence that once felt heavy began to feel sacred. I had finally learned the rhythm of my own peace, no more waiting for messages that never came. No more twisting myself into the version of a daughter they preferred. Every now and then, I'd dream of my family. Not the real version, but the one I used to imagine: dinners full of laughter, birthday candles glowing on both ends of the table, my mother's arms warm and proud around me. And then every time I'd wake, I'd feel that small ache again. Not anger, not longing, just acceptance that the dream had never really been mine. Nathan became the quiet constant in all of it. He never asked me to move on before I was ready. Some nights when the memories tried to slip back in, he'd hold me close and whisper, "You don't owe anyone your pain." Those words became my new mantra. Then one Sunday afternoon, as I was cleaning out old boxes, I found a small photo album wedged at the bottom of a storage bin. I hadn't opened it in years. The cover was faded, the corners bent, a relic from the time I still thought love from them was something to earn. I sat on the floor, flipping through each page. There were pictures of childhood birthdays, though none of mine were there. Just Megan's, her grin wide, the table full of gifts, my parents glowing behind her. There was one photo, though, that caught me off guard. It was the two of us, side by side, on the front steps around age 12. Megan had her arms around me, smiling for the camera. But I remembered that day, it wasn't a moment of sisterly love. She'd whispered something cruel just before the flash. Something like, "Mom says you'll never be as special as me." I had smiled anyway, because back then I still believed being kind would make them love me more. I closed the album gently. The ache in my chest was real but soft this time, like an old scar that no longer stung when you touched it. That night, I wrote in my journal, "Some people are born into families that nurture them. Others are born into families that teach them how to nurture themselves." I was finally okay being the second kind. But the universe in its cruel irony wasn't quite done testing me. It was the week before Christmas when I got an email subject line, "Urgent Family Matter." It was from my father. My heart skipped, but I opened it anyway. The message was short, direct, emotionless. "Your mother's been in the hospital. Megan's handling things, but it would be nice if you showed up. She's still your mother." The words punched through the serenity I had built. For a long moment, I just sat there staring at the screen. My hands went cold. Part of me wanted to delete it, to stay silent, to protect the fragile peace I'd finally built. But another part, the daughter part, couldn't. Nathan found me sitting on the couch, eyes distant. "Talk to me," he said gently. I told him what had happened. He didn't tell me what to do. He just asked one question. "Would you regret not going?" And that was enough. 2 days later, I was driving down the same stretch of road I'd driven hundreds of times as a child. The closer I got to the town where I'd grown up, the smaller I felt like I was slipping back into the version of me that used to shrink to fit their comfort. When I walked into the hospital, I almost turned around. The smell of antiseptic, the sound of the monitors, it all brought back memories of that day I miscarried alone. But I didn't turn back. Room 218. She was there, my mother, pale thinner, her hair gray at the roots. Megan was sitting beside her, holding her hand, looking up at me with that same startled guilt I'd seen before. "Liv," she whispered, "you came." I nodded but didn't speak. My mother opened her eyes slowly. For a moment, confusion clouded her face, then recognition, then something that looked like shame. "You're here," she said weakly. I wanted to say, "You're surprised," but I didn't. I just stood there, heart racing, unsure of what I owed her anymore. She motioned weakly to the chair. "Sit, honey." Honey. The same word she used in every distant birthday text. I sat down, my hands clasped together tightly. "I'm glad you came," she said after a long silence. "Your father told me you were angry." That made me laugh softly, bitterly. "I wasn't angry," I said. "I was just done." Her eyes glistened. "You've always been so strong." "No," I said quietly. "I've just always been ignored." The air between us grew heavy. Megan shifted uncomfortably, her gaze flicking between us. For once she had nothing to say. Mom swallowed hard. "I know I wasn't fair to you. I just thought you didn't need as much from me. You were so capable." Capable, the word that had built my prison. "Being capable doesn't mean I didn't need love," I said softly. Tears spilled down her cheeks, fragile as glass. "I'm sorry," she whispered. For the first time, I believed she meant it. Not because she said it perfectly, but because it came out broken. I didn't cry. I didn't forgive her either. But I let her words sit there like a fragile offering. We sat in silence after that. Not the kind of silence that burned, the kind that settled, like a wound finally beginning to close. Before I left, she squeezed my hand. "I hope one day you'll come home." I looked at her and said the truth, the gentlest truth I could manage. "I already have, just not here." When I walked out of that hospital, the air outside felt like a new beginning. Megan caught up to me in the parking lot. She looked exhausted, her perfect facade finally cracked. "You really changed," she said. I turned to her and smiled faintly. "So can you." She didn't answer. Maybe she couldn't. Driving home, the sunset turned the sky the color of honey, and fire the same golden light that used to fill all their photos. But this time it didn't sting. It was just light. When I got home, Nathan was waiting at the door, worry softening his features. I didn't have to say anything. He just pulled me into his arms and whispered, "You did it." And he was right. Not because I confronted them, but because I faced the ghosts that used to control me and walked away without needing to win. That night I sat on the balcony looking out at the city lights and realized something powerful. Sometimes closure doesn't come from their apology. It comes from your acceptance that the story is finished, even if they never understood it. I finally felt free. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. And tell me in the comments, have you ever walked away from family to find peace? Your story might help someone else find theirs too.